Now. So, all right. Hello, everybody. Let me get my screen set up nicely here. I've got so many different options to play with. This is fun. All right. So, hello, everybody watching. I am HP Holo, and you are watching Authors Just Talk About. This is the first one in, I want to say, about a year. So, it's fun to be getting back to this little series. If this is your first time joining us, this is a series about authors just talking about random stuff. And tonight, I've got a bunch of other authors on to talk about game mastering. And so I guess I'm just going to let everybody go down the line, tell us who you are, what you wrote, and where we can find your stuff. And then we will start talking about gaming. So let me get everybody on the screen here. And let's start with David. You're next to me, so you can go first.
All right. Well, I am not an author. I actually am a game designer. I came out with Cat Magic, the really blurred Cat Magic, the card game.
Which is connected to your author wife series.
My wife is Lydia Scherer, who writes Love Lies and Hocus Pocus. And I do all our marketing for Chenoweth Press. So that is what I do. That's who I am.
My thing just did
also
weird.
Time Magazine 2006 Man of the Year.
Congratulations.
That joke never gets old, and I love it. It's one of my favorite things ever. All right.
I have put it on 2 resumes now and got the job twice because of it, because they were like, no, you weren't. I'm like, if I was, do I get the job? I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then they look it up and they're like, okay, I got to hire you.
That's brilliant. Nice. Let's see. Jane, how about you next?
Hi, my name's Jane Linsgold. I have been a full-time writer since 1994. I've got 30-some published novels, 80 or 90-some published short stories, a bunch of nonfiction. My most recent books are Library of the Sapphire Wind, Aurora Borealis Bridge, and A New Clan in collaboration with David Weber. And I live in New Mexico.
Nice. The Overwear series is one of my new favorite ones, by the way. I have been fangirling over that series since I read it a few months ago. I love it. I love it so much. All right. James, calling on you next.
My name is James Young. I am the author of the, let's put that where the light's not blurring it, the Usurper's War series of alternate history. I am also a D&D dungeon master. I have 2 campaigns going on. Other than that, I also have alternate history series of anthologies out, The Phases of Mars, through Chris Kennedy Press. And that pretty much covers me.
Cool. All right. Tim, you'll be next.
Right. So my name is Tim Akers. I am a full-time fantasy and science fiction writer. My current series is Night Watch, which is Men in Black at the Ren Fair. I also have Wraithbound coming out later this year, which is weirdly epic fantasy. I'm also a game writer. I started writing for White Wolf while I was still in college years ago, and I've written for various companies since then. Right now, I am one of the main writers for Malifaux, their game system for Malifaux and for over the other side. So,
cool. And finally, John Hartness.
Hey there. I'm John Hartness. I'm the founder and publisher of Falstaff Books, an independent press based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I also write multiple series, mostly urban fantasy, including Quincy Harker Demon Hunter, Bubba the Monster Hunter, and the Black Knight Chronicles. I run a lot of live games at conventions where I rope writers into behaving like idiots and rolling dice with me for a couple of hours in front of an audience. And I'm a cast member of the Authors and Dragons family of live play podcasts where you can watch me play as Fandingo the Fantastical, the bard of all trades.
Nice. We have a hello from Nexie Shadow. Hey, Nexie. And I actually think I gave my name but didn't actually formally introduce myself. I also write, and my most recent series is it's Monster Punk Horizon, which is a game-lit fantasy about monster hunters doing dumb, silly stuff as they try not to die while hunting monsters. It's a goofy little thing. but less about me, more to the rest of you and your game mastering experience. So my first question for you guys is, how long have you been playing tabletop RPGs in general? And then how much of that time has actually been spent game mastering? So who wants to go first on that one?
I'll start.
And I can also add the question, which RPGs do you play, and which ones are your favorites? So, Jane?
Okay. I started when I was a freshman in college, so 17, not quite 18. That, for those who are game geeks, you can figure out when I started college, when I say that the AD&D hardcovers were just coming out, and most people had the box set that came with the dice that like were really soft plastic and the edges rolled off. Yep. And I've been a gamer in one way or another pretty much steadily since then. Currently, my favorite system is GURPS, 3rd edition.
Oh, I'm going to interrupt you, Jane. We have Howard managed to join us. Good, you made it. we were worried for a little bit there. I was looking around to see if you had if you'd had some kind of technical difficulties or whatever. So pause the questions for a second, so that Howard, if you'll introduce yourself, what you've written, and tell us where people can find your books.
Well, hi there. First, I apologize for the delay. I've been having spotty internet usage all day, and it seemed fine this evening, and then 10 minutes before I was
Naturally.
on, it went out again. So so I think the main reason I might be here tonight is because I have a big stack of Pathfinder novels to my credit.
That would do it.
I've also done some I did 2 Arabian fantasy novels for St. Martin's and a heroic fantasy trilogy for St. Martin's, and I edit Tales from the Magician's Skull for Dungeon Crawl Classics, Goodman Games. And I've got a book coming out from Bain next August, and I'm really excited about it. It's a sword and sorcery novel called Lord of a Shattered Land. It is the first of a new series.
Nice. Did the cover for that one just release? I feel like that's been in my brain recently for some reason.
Right. It's a real sword and sandal kind of cover.
Yeah. Yes, but cool. All right.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry I'm late.
Oh yes, it's perfectly all right. Computer things happen. We've got a nice little crowd tonight. All right, so Howard, for you, my question that I just asked everyone, which Jane was answering, so we'll go back to her right after. But how long have you been playing tabletop RPGs, and how much of that time has been spent game mastering? And also, which RPGs do you play, and which ones are your favorites? So, Jane, sorry to interrupt you.
No worries. I'll just say that I probably started running games in my early 20s, and of late I've been mostly running rather than playing. So let's pass the baton.
All right, who wants to go next?
I'll jump in.
All right.
I started playing with that red box set that Jane mentioned, with the Larry Elmore dragon painted for the cover and the soft dice that had no color on the numbers, so you took your crayon and you colored in the numbers in whatever. And I assume most people did what I did, which is took multiple colors to each die, so that when you landed on numbers, it was different fun colors. That would have been in the early to mid 80s when I started playing, so late elementary school for me. Then I took a break through high school because it wasn't cool to play role-playing games in the late 1980s, early 90s, and I had not yet come to accept the fact that I'll never be cool, so I was still doing things to maybe be cool. I've since given up on that. I played a little in college. I played a little with a group after college when I moved here to Charlotte, and then stopped again until I was invited onto the Authors and Dragons podcast, and picked it back up we started that podcast on Pathfinder, actually, and then transitioned over to 5th edition after a couple of years once 5e released and really kind of exploded in popularity. And those are the only 2 tabletop RPG systems that I've played, except for, I think we did a Night of Champions one night in college, but the vast majority of that time is very, very blurry. And I'm pretty sure we didn't actually finish anything except a bottle of rum. But I know we
But you know
finished
you
off
had
at least
fun
one of
doing it.
those. Yeah. So as a GM, I have only started doing that recently since I started playing with the A&D crew, and then started playing some convention games and realized that with a theater and performance background, I'm fairly well equipped to
Oh yeah.
do live games at conventions. And so now I've run them for Con Carolinas, Liberty Con, Multiverse, Dragon Con. So yeah, I stay pretty busy.
Oh yeah, definitely. Who's next?
I'll go. So let's see. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, North Carolina, in a small town, and in the middle of what is affectionately now known as the Satanic Panic around games. And my parents very strictly refused to let me play D&D. So my first game was the red box of Middle Earth role playing. And even then, the first night that we played, all of my players' parents came over and had dinner, and then sat around and watched us play for the first hour to hour and a half. It was a high stress situation. But after that, I've played a lot of different games. I went from MERP into Rollmaster to the original Cyberpunk, which became Cyberpunk 2020 while I was in high school. And then Shadowrun, went to college, met my wife over a game of Shadowrun, stuck with her. Played D&D, played pretty much most role-playing games. Went into horror for a long time, so I played Cult, the whole World of Darkness series. Kind of stepped for a long time. I thought I was going to be a game designer full time. Like that was my goal. And then sort of stopped that about the time Magic killed role playing games for a long time. People don't remember that anymore, but there was a period in time when all the money was going into card games. You could not get money into regular RPGs, and then it reversed. You know, with D&D coming back and really sort of taking over, becoming the tabula rasa of games. So, or the lingua franca. That's actually the word I meant.
Yeah, tabula rasa.
Yeah.
Tabula rasa means blank slate, and that's
I knew
not what
what
I
you
was
meant.
talking about. But yeah, no. And so like for D&D, like I'm still in the D&D group that was my wife's D&D group in college, and I didn't join it till a couple years after college. So yeah, we're a gaming family.
Oh yeah.
We're not doing this. We're playing WoW, and that's kind of our life. So we're never cool, but we're cool.
Cool to the right people.
Yeah. People who matter.
All right. I have
Tim,
completely lost track of.
Tim, I can totally relate to Magic taking all the money out of the game world, because if I didn't have my background blurred, you could see probably the 20,000 Magic cards behind me.
Yeah.
And I wear my mana symbols on my sleeve.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's kind of like the
just
saying
sold
goes,
last
don't
of
worry
my
about
collection.
your kids doing drugs. Just introduce them to magic. They won't have any money for it.
Yep. Exactly.
True
My
story.
husband and I, we actually have this rule about Magic where we play other card games, but with Magic, we only ever play with stuff we buy in pre-made sets, because we know that if we start deck building with Magic, we're going to spend a stupid amount of money for a game we actually don't have all that much time to play compared to other games. And so Magic is just, we have Magic rules at our house.
Feeling
I
a
have
little called out
completely-
here.
I've completely
just
lost track of
recently-
who has answered my question.
I
But-
have not. I can go next.
I have not
Okay.
either. I'll go after
Okay.
David.
So I just recently sold the last of my Magic the Gathering collection because I was saving a few decks just to have like in case somebody wanted to play. And then I went to look at them and found out that one of them had been damaged due to just sitting on the shelf and me forgetting about it for so long. And Underground Seas are expensive, and there were some in that deck. So I was like, I'm going to just sell the rest of these before I lose another $4,000 to like my cat knocking something over and me not finding it for 4 years. So how I started playing was I went to a magic shop. I went to a shop that sold Magic the Gathering, and they had this weird group of kids that sat in the back playing D&D, and I had no idea what it was. And they were like, hey, do you want to play? And I'm like, sure, I'll play. I don't know what this is, and I've got Magic tournament in like an hour. I got some time to kill. I rolled up a character and could not play anything because they were playing AD&D, and back in AD&D, at least to that group, they rolled stats in order, and you had to have a certain set of stats to play something. So the character creation process was roll dice and see what you can play. And I rolled a character whose stats were so bad I could not play a fighter. So they were like, okay, we're going to bump your intelligence up to 13 and you can be a wizard. And so I played a wizard. We rolled up my spells randomly because that's how dumb that group was. And my only offensive spell was Chill Touch. I sat down at the table, had no idea what I was doing, and 4 hit points. The party ambushed. Party gets ambushed by trolls. Everyone but me dies in the first round. They're like, all right, David, you're up. What are you going to do? I'm like, I guess I'm going to Chill Touch myself because I'm the only thing on the board I can kill. And then I went and played the tournament. After that, I got caught up with a bunch of people from a company called White Wolf that some people may know about. And I played Vampire the Masquerade with a guy named Mike, who was a contributor to White Wolf. He wrote some books, and I ended up meeting a lot of those people, and we played Vampire the Masquerade. And so that was my first experience with actual fun role playing. And then I played some D&D again with people that didn't know how to play D&D, but I thought it was like really fun. I liked wizards better than vampires. And then in 2000, the 3rd edition books came out. So we all got really excited. My gaming group got together and we're like, we're going to play D&D. And then we show up on the night that we were supposed to play, and I'm the only one that actually bought the book.
Oh,
so
no.
I'm the only one that read the rules, only one that bought the book, and they're like, I guess you're the DM. And that's been my life ever since. I'm the constant DM. I opened up a gaming store shortly thereafter. I've DM'd literally professionally because that's the whole reason people came into my shop, was to play in my games for a long time. Ran Magic tournaments and ran D&D games. During the Vampire the Masquerade games I played, we would also switch out for Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft stuff. So I played Ravenloft, I played Vampire the Masquerade, and then I became the DM for our group for the rest of time. Because I owned a gaming store, if it's a game that was around in the early 2000s, I've either run it or played in it or hated it so much that I never wanted anyone to speak of it. That's basically Big Eyes, Small Mouth. That's a short list of games I never wanted anyone to bring into my store.
I don't think I've even heard of that one.
Oh man, it's anime role playing for people who are way more into anime than role playing.
That actually sounds like I would love it. I'm kind of curious to try it out now.
Well, it had perks that you could buy. Like one was called Too Damn Cool, and all it did was make your hair and cape blow constantly.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It had rules like that.
Right after this panel, I'm buying this game.
My problem
with that in real life.
My problem with it was that the people that wanted to play weren't people I wanted to play with.
Makes sense.
And I ran Kobolds Ate My Baby for a long time, and Kobolds Ate My Baby is this really hilarious game where the point of the game, in my opinion, is to see how many times you can kill your players before they realize that that's actually the point of the game.
Nice.
You play kobolds trying to sneak into a village and steal babies for a feast that the Kobold King is holding. That is the plot of the game. You get magic items like the bowl of milk elemental summoning, so that if you're in an area with a cow, you could summon a milk elemental from the cow. You can get perks like Bouncy, which makes you immune to fall damage. So no matter how hard you fall or from where you fall, you just bounce. You can get a ring of speaking human, which it doesn't actually, like, it lets you speak human, but anytime a human sees you, they try to kill you. So it doesn't really have any effect on the game. It's a trap. People will pick it as their magic item, going, I will diplomacy my way out of this person stabbing me with a pitchfork. It is a hilarious game.
You're still a kobold, son.
Yeah, let's say.
So,
All right, I think. Oh,
did I answer all the questions?
I believe
I
so.
feel like I just
yes.
rambled.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
We're all gonna ramble tonight. So
And
I think Howard and James.
if you could see my camera, there's like
Hey.
$5,000 worth of Dwarven Forge terrain, like right there. Like my camera was. So don't feel bad about your Magic the Gathering card collection. I have more useless stuff.
I have worked so hard at staying out of the Dwarven Forge stuff, but there's a bookcase full of Kickstarter limited edition Kickstarter perks behind me. None of which I've ever played.
They were a product.
I think we should give. Shut up, guys, and give James and Howard a chance.
Oh yeah, it's fine. I'm not accustomed to having so many
panel.
people on a panel. Yeah, we do need to give James and Howard time to speak though, because we're actually already 20 minutes in. Good Lord! All right,
I was just laughing because, I did not play with the soft dice, but I started AD&D and AD&D about the time where people were still talking about the soft dice. So it would have been late 80s. Role-playing games. There was an old James Bond clone role-playing game that I played a little bit in high school with some friends. A little bit of the fastest Star Trek with the role-playing elements. Mainly we used a tactical simulator. But really, I didn't start getting into games a lot until I got into college. We had a war games committee. And the gentleman who ran most of our games was a gentleman by the name of Alex McCrease, who is now a game designer, goes by the name Autark. He's the author of the Adventure Conqueror King system, and he GM'd for us for Shadowrun and Cyberpunk, both of those being the original versions of it. And yes, it was great hilarity. I learned a lot about GMing from Alex. Also Mechton. He was what I like to call the tough but fair GM. If you did something stupid, consequences were going to happen, and that's pretty much how I carry myself as a DM/DM or GM rather. Is hey, you can go up there and boop the dragon if you want, but really hope you took that potion of fire resistance because you're about to get lit on fire. Other than that, now I'm primarily, almost or completely a 5e player or DM. Play a little bit too in my wife's campaign. She runs a monthly campaign with two different groups, same campaign but two different groups. And then I have my two campaigns I run on Monday and Thursday. Yes, top secret. That's what it was. Somebody in the chat apparently also suffered through it.
Yeah, and then someone asked, no Palladium Rifts Love. Has anyone played that? I'm not familiar with that system. Oh, nice.
I've played it.
So
I know the system, but
yeah, I think Howard is having connection issues again, so we will come back to him when he's able to reconnect. So I guess my entry into DMing is actually a rather amusing one. I used to work for a local library system, and I suppose I should actually move myself so I can actually be seen here. But I had never played any tabletop RPG of any kind. But then I worked in teen services, and my boss came to me and said, "I want you to start a gaming club, and I want there to be a tabletop RPG element, like tabletop RPG, card gaming, whatever. Pick one and go with it." And at the time, we had a lot of Pathfinder rule books in the system that were easily accessed, and so I was like, "Okay, we'll figure out Pathfinder." And it made absolutely no sense to me, having never touched a tabletop RPG at all. But then luckily I found a coworker who actually ran Dungeons and Dragons campaigns each weekend. And so joined with them and played for a little bit to sort of figure out how the actual gameplay worked. And then about 2 weeks after playing in my first campaign, was putting together stuff to run. And so I was kind of thrown in head first into DMing. And luckily the kids who came to my programs also had no idea what to expect of tabletop RPGs, so I very much kind of fumbled my way through it, and very much used a house rules version of the Pathfinder books that we had access to at the library. But over the course of that, just developed a really fun little gaming group of all my crazy little teens. And actually, I'm the opposite of James, in that whenever my teens started doing something really stupid, I would reward them for it. Like you would get extra experience for being ridiculous in my campaigns. They were all there was a very anime style. but it was nuts. But that's I've played Pathfinder, have a little bit of experience with Dungeons and Dragons, and then Iron Kingdoms is one that I really enjoyed. I haven't DM'd in Iron Kingdoms, but it's got this really fun steampunk vibe, and I really like the way the actual numbers of that system works. And then I play a little bit of Starfinder too, but it's been about a decade since I've done anything with GMing, so I'm going to let you guys do most of the talking during this panel. But anyway, my next question is about planning campaigns. And so when you plan campaigns, my computer just made a noise. So, Howard made it back. Yes. All right. So we were actually about to go to my next question, but I will let you answer the previous one since I think you're the last one that has to go.
Well, I'll keep it short then, since I know we're ready to move on to a new question. I believe the question was, how did I get started in role playing and what I played?
Yes. Yes,
so
that's right.
I started in junior high in the late 70s with whatever D&D books happened to be lying around. And so that was a little bit of advanced D&D and a couple of, I don't know if it was Blue Box or whatever it was. We didn't know.
It had to be chainmail.
No, it wasn't chainmail. It was some kind of little paperback with a dragon on the cover.
Yeah, but I don't think AD&D came out until 1980. Anyway,
You're probably just playing regular D&D.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. It was the one with the deities and demigods and the player's handbook and the original monsters manual, the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yeah, those started coming out in 1980.
No, I was playing in 77.
Okay.
And I know we had the player's handbook then.
Huh.
Yeah.
Cool.
Possibly I'm from a different shadow.
If there's ever going to be a time nexus, it would be this panel.
Of course.
Well, we played D&D for a long time, and then I started switching over to other stuff like Star Trek, the role-playing game. Star Trek was my big love, the original Star Trek. So I ran that for years, but we also did all kinds of other things like Talos Lanta and Paranoia, Twilight 2000 for a little bit. We tried a little bit of Shadowrun. We tried a little bit of ICE. We ended up calling ICE Iron Crown Enterprises stuff. We called it chart law rather than arms law because there were so many freaking charts. I think the ones that we ended up loving the most, though, were probably Dragon Quest, which was bought and killed by TSR, and Talos Lanta, and Star Trek, the role-playing game, as I already mentioned. And then I guess we kept on playing. We eventually tried Vampire the Masquerade and whatever, Vampire the Gathering, Werewolf the Masquerade. I don't know. We tried all that stuff except for Mage. Never got around to Mage. Amber, the diceless role-playing system, because we were huge Zelazny fans. And that was interesting and a little bit of a challenge, but also quite fun. And then more recently, I'm awful busy writing. I think you could probably relate to this. But I do run stuff, and the group is much smaller. Mostly I just run now for either my wife and my son, but occasionally some other old friends will Skype in. And nowadays I prefer rules light systems. I want the rules to get out of the way so I don't have to spend any time looking anything up or memorizing rules or monsters. And so, for instance, I've got a stack of stuff over here. I like the new old school Essentials and Hyperborea, and of course Dungeon Crawl Classics, Castles and Crusades. This is a nice one. Through Sunken Lands. They also did Beyond the Wall. Anyway, I like simple systems where we can just get straight to the story and not worry about the rules as much.
I don't like that too. I find that if systems are complicated, I just kind of ignore them and do house rules, which actually brings me to actually one of my later questions. But we're here. Do you guys prefer house rules, or are you a stickler for the rules? And I guess Howard, you've already just answered that one. Who wants to jump in with that? House rules or hard rules?
Yeah, I'll go real quick. I actually hate rules, just as a general rule. That's the only rule I like, is I hate rules. I'm much more into the improvisational, like the actual storytelling aspects of the stuff. I do have players who are rule sticklers, and they get in my way sometimes. So you like to just sort of kill them and not explain why.
Yeah, one of my best friends when I was writing Pathfinder novels, I of course ran some Pathfinder to get a feel for it, and I loved it for the opening levels. But later, I began to feel like I was having to cram for an exam in order to run it.
Yeah.
But a buddy of mine would constantly shout "attack of opportunity," and it came to a point when he would shout that I would feel like hitting him. I'm not a violent person, but it's like, it's like, let's just get on with the story.
Yeah. No, I'm always more story oriented than rules oriented. So by house rules, you mean throwing out rules and then just
just by kind of adapting your own. Yeah,
that's I do that a lot.
Yeah. Let's see.
I'm more of a. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jane.
No, James, please.
I have house rules, but I'm more of a rules is written, simply because I think if you come to the table, everyone has to know where the left and right limit is, because if we just started doing things at random, I mean, but it 5 sessions and show up with a destroyer. And there's a role-playing game for that, and it's not D&D. But so like I have a few house rules, like bonus action, drink a potion. If you take a full action, drink a potion, you max it. Things of that nature. But yeah, I'm more. I kind of get towards the rules are written just to keep things in the lane.
Jane?
Yeah, I think for me, I've played Iceless with Eric Wujcik and Roger Zelazny, in fact.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I lived with Roger. I was with Roger when he died, so.
I know.
But the place I like rules is for combat, because nobody should feel their beloved character was killed or mutilated or something else because the referee got, was unfair. I've seen it a lot. So with the current group, we're using Group 3rd Edition, and that's a heavily skill-based system. And when my characters are really good at a particular skill, I'll say, toss the dice, for goodness sake, just a fumble. And you've got it. And Jane, don't fumble. That's when we screw up.
And now you've cursed us. Thank you.
But for combat, I really like having, even if we streamline it some, especially when my characters are really good, I do like a rule system in place, so that nobody feels that their beloved character gets killed or mutilated or whatever on my whim. I've played with some fairly aggressive groups of people. Not my current group. My current group is like cooperative storytelling to the max. But I played with some groups where people would have screwed each other over if there hadn't been that rule system in there in the middle. So I'm kind of rules are for protecting people from hurting each other in a situation where people can be awfully vulnerable. Because a lot of people do start really identifying with their characters.
That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. I was playing in a game once with George R.R. Martin and some other people, and George is has an impish streak when gaming, and he was he's silly.
I
he was-
can't
he-
imagine.
He was trying to have a, his main character commit suicide nobly because we were playing in ancient Rome, and the dice rolls were really screwing it up.
Oh my
So
gosh.
he couldn't commit suicide properly. But yeah, so I'll back off. But for me, yeah, rules, especially for combat, so that people don't feel that it's my whim.
Mhm.
If I may, that
Oh, yeah.
reminded me of something. I'll just say this real quick. You talked about fumbling, Jane, and I know that there's a popular house rule about confirming your criticals. Since I usually run sort of a heroic game where everyone's playing sword and sorcery style heroes, you don't normally see Conan trip over his boot or drop his dagger. So I don't roll to confirm criticals. I roll to confirm fumbles. That's my house rule.
I think David and John, I think you two are the only ones who haven't gone for this one.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I mean,
I
mine's
can't.
a mix between everybody. So if I'm
Mhm.
running like Dungeons and Dragons, I want everybody sitting down at the table to know the rules. So I run it rules as written. But if beforehand you want to play a character, like in my last game I ran, the girl I was running for wanted to play this like orcish soldier whose clan was real big in necromancy, but she wanted to play a fighter. So we took the Eldritch Knight and swapped out the evocation for necromancy. We did that beforehand. We also gave her a little bit of alchemy to make her character as powerful as an Eldritch Knight would be, because evocation is way more powerful than necromancy in 5th edition. So I am flexible with like character creation. If your character would start with a set of half plate because you're in like the town guard, but you can't afford it because you rolled real low on your gold at the beginning of the game, like that's fine. We can work with that. But as long as everyone after the game starts, everyone is playing by the same rules, nobody can say anything about it. But if I want to play with a group of people that are more storyteller oriented and think the rules may get in the way, I'll switch game systems. We'll play something like Exalted. And Exalted is a game of you get stunt dice for how cool you describe what your character's doing. So nobody ever sits down at Exalted and goes, I stab him with my sword, or I want to attack. I'm going to make a power attack. No, it's I'm going to jump in the air and I'm going to like jump to the corner of the wall and hold myself up to the wall with like my head and my legs, and I'm going to shoot arrows down at the guy, and then I'm going to backflip off of him and stab him with my last arrow. And then like that is really cool in Exalted. That's not something you could do in Dungeons and Dragons.
Mhm.
You can't like run up rocks at somebody else through like your Legolas in a terribly written movie. You know, it's for different games. I have different rules on making stuff up or sticking by the rules.
And then John, did you? Oh, yes.
I will
James.
say you just made me think about it with the necromancer discussion. One thing I do depart is I do allow a lot of homebrew products simply because things like, necromancy and the rules is written for 5e is kind of weak sauce versus
real bad.
the, no, I want to be able to melt people's skin, face across the room. That's the necromancer I want to be. Well,
Yeah.
okay, we probably have a supplement for that.
We do a lot of reflavoring of stuff. Like if you want to play a necromancer and you want to shoot like bone daggers at people, just take magic missile and reskin it, make it necromancy. Like I do a lot of that. Reflavoring fireball to be necromantic energy. That's absolutely fine in my game. Just we talk about it beforehand. You get your own version of that spell, and that's suddenly in the world. My game, my personal homebrew game, has a city of necromancers that doesn't fit in 5th edition because like all the spells that they were based on went away. So I do a lot of like reflavoring rather than home brewing.
All right. So the inevitable question. Oh, John, did you have an answer or did you?
It's a little different for me because the majority of games that I play are one shots and in front of an audience.
Yeah.
So
have a
as
lot of time.
a performative, entertaining thing, we're all making stuff up all the time because it's not funny or fun for the audience if 30 minutes into a 2-hour presentation the party gets wiped. I mean,
Yeah,
you can make that funny, but it's hard to have everybody in the room have a good time. So we fudge a lot of things in the name of entertainment, as opposed to if we're running a more long-term campaign, that's a whole different thing. So there's a lot of house rules, and there's a lot of let's say flexibility in a lot of those house rules. Basically, if it's cool, go for it. And if the audience is going to think it's cool, go for it even harder.
Oh, my screen's doing stuff. Okay. All right. Next, the inevitable question for a panel with a bunch of author gamers. Does your tabletop RPG hobby, whether playing or DMing, influence your writing? And if so, how? And this one, I actually have other questions, but this could easily carry us through to the end. But who wants to go first on that one?
In world building, the way that I build like cultural tensions and stuff, and the way that I build cosmologies, that's all very heavily based on how I run a game. Same basic ideas, because stories are kind of the same everywhere, right? The world that the book that I'm working on that's coming up, I actually wrote the game system for it first, and then I wrote the game that would be made based on the world, and then I wrote the world, and then I'm working on the plot. So yeah, I often backfill in that sort of manner. Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else? I know with me.
Sure.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Yeah, you can go first.
I was just going to say it'll be uncharacteristically quick because it influences my writing very little, because the games that I play in are a high fantasy setting, and most of what I write is urban fantasy setting. So it's very the disconnect is pretty broad, and I think that it's more that my writing influences my style of gaming and game running, because I tend to write comedy and I tend to want to make the games be as fun and entertaining for an audience as possible. So there's not a whole lot of backside cross-pollination for me.
Interesting.
Since I don't write, mine can be pretty quick. The influence that my game has on my wife's writing is that my wife has heard the story of one of my longtime role-playing games over and over again, so much so that she wrote it into a book, and that was one of the stories that made USA Today to bestseller list.
Oh, cool.
So I've had a D&D game on the USA Today bestseller list, even though I didn't write it.
Oh, go ahead.
My next game is going to be a dungeon crawl game, so that actually will be impacted by my D&D experience.
Alas, there's not a whole lot of crossover between D&D fantasy and an alternate World War II, but
yeah,
my players would swear that the crossover is bad things happen to good people. That pretty much is, my wife has always given me a hard time about how harsh I am. Again, I don't think I'm that harsh. I just think that sometimes people, you're messing with a 1,000-year-old entity. If you start talking smack to it, bad things are going to happen.
I guess I could go on. So my groups typically anymore, my wife and my son prefer more of a high fantasy feel. And I don't really like writing in a high fantasy feel. I prefer more of a historical fantasy or sword and sorcery vibe, sort of a sword and sandal thing with a little more grit. And so I don't really do any world building from the settings that I create or run with them, but I do take characters, and sometimes I create villains in the gaming that I end up transporting over. characters, dialogue. Sometimes I'll try out a plot idea in the worlds I create, and then that'll get transplanted over into whatever I'm working on.
I think for me, it's not direct. I have done a couple of things, like my short story, Small Heroes, features a character that I put together for a short-lived role-playing game that someone else was running that didn't go very long. And I liked the character so much, I decided to use it as the protagonist as a story. I do have 2 novels that I've never tried to sell that are based on a long-term campaign I ran. Maybe one of these days I should try and sell them, but they're kind of middle grade into YA, and that's not what I typically write. So it would be entering a whole new market for me. But I like them. Well, I liked them a lot. They were the game premise was loosely based on the idea that Tamara Pierce uses in her Protector of the Small books, that, you know, instead of knights being individually trained by patrons, they go to school. So my characters were playing, you know, young people who were enrolled in a knight academy. And it was fun, and a lot of weird things went on. And I wrote up, like I said, I've written 2 books. Maybe I should try and do something with them. I've thought about actually translating them into a different place on the world that my Library of the Sapphire Wind and Aurora Borealis Bridge are in, because they would fit the mood very well. One thing I've found, just as an aside, is a lot of the people I've gamed with since I've moved to New Mexico are writers. And writers make very weird gamers because they're used to running everything, and sometimes reminding them that, you know, this is a shared storytelling experience can be a bit of a problem. That's probably where I came up with the fact that I strongly prefer to have combat systems in there to keep somebody from just, you know, rewriting the plot for everybody. So for me, it's an indirect experience. I do have to say that I've been running for the last 10 years or so for the same group, and they're all super smart, super cooperative. And I do sometimes find myself, both as a reader and a writer, finding myself saying, these people are dumber than my gamers. You know, why are they making these stupid choices? And if it's not like your books, you know, HP, Happy you know, where that's kind of part of it, I find my tolerance for stupid has gone way down.
Oh yeah, with actual people, yeah. And one of the points of the Monster Punk Horizon series, for those who haven't read it, is it is pure mischief all the way through. And that actually, if you're finished, Jane, I can actually go into my thing. Yeah, I find that once I started figuring out how to game master, it actually started affecting the way I tell stories significantly, because it changes the way I pace them. One of the most important things I learned with my teenagers when I was running campaigns with them is that they're not going to sit through a whole lot of exposition. They're not going to sit through a whole lot of world background, at least in large chunks. And working at the library, I had basically an hour a month to run campaigns in. So I started being really efficient with my world building and with my storytelling and with my plotting. And basically the way I plot books now is I basically try to think of it in terms of a game. Like, would this be a fun story to play through? And if it's not if a scene is not a fun thing to play through, I basically don't write it. And it's just a really easy shorthand to help me figure out how to organize my stories. We did have some really good viewer questions. And so the first one I wanted to ask comes from Patriotic Gestalt, who says, any opinions on Critical Role? Is it helpful or detrimental on RPG expectations for noobs? Let me see if I can display it here. Yeah, there we go. And I have not, I've only seen I've only seen the animated series, so my context is very limited for Critical Role. So I'm going to sit back on this one. But anyone who is familiar with Critical Role, go for it.
I have
Right.
opinions.
I have lots of opinions.
Um,
I feel like me and John have similar opinions because of the face he just made.
honestly, I don't know because as far as helpful or detrimental, my answer is yes. Critical Role as a piece of popular culture, because it's definitely surpassed being a YouTube show and moved into being a part of popular culture. As that existing and being very wildly popular, it's great for role playing in the same sense that Twilight was great for people who write vampires, because I write vampires, and Twilight was great for my wallet because there's only a few Twilight books. People can only watch so much Critical Role before they get interested in either other live play podcasts that don't have 4-hour episodes, or they want something that's flavored a little different, or they want to dig further into other content creators. So, and in the sense of bringing people to the game, they're incredible. They're fantastic. But most of us have not played in multi-million-dollar studios with dozens of crew members and sets and camera angles and finely constructed environments, and there is a level of expectation, and people literally call it the Matt Mercer effect, and it's real. Because if you've never played with, you and 3 friends sitting in the dirt at recess, rolling dice in the April sun, and all you've ever seen is Matt Mercer, who's an incredible GM, and his crew of professional voice actors producing this highly produced event, if that's all you've ever seen, then you think that's what D&D is. When most of the time, it's a bunch of idiots rolling really badly and
Beer and pretzels.
and wondering where the pretzels are, and hey, your cat knocked over my beer.
Mm-hmm.
And shopping encounters that last 8 years.
Spending
Right.
4 hours trying to cross a river, just dumb stuff like that.
Yeah, the
Spending
problem
3 episodes of a podcast trying to figure out what's at the bottom of a well. The answer
me
was
and John-
almost dead rogue.
me and John have literally the exact same thoughts on Critical Role. My problem is whenever people show up to one of my games, whenever I've invited some new person, and then they complain about me not being Matt Mercer, and I'm like, I'm not a professional voice actor with a budget of $1 bajillion, but if you give me a chance, we'll have fun. And then I get stopped like every few minutes by them going, but that's not how they do it on Critical Role. Why aren't we doing a group check for this? Or why aren't we doing this? I'm like, well, I mean, that's something they made up for that particular session in the game. That's not actually in the rule book. But we can talk about stuff later if you want, like after the game. Don't interrupt the game for it. And then those conversations never actually happen. And then that happens like 3 or 4 times. And then I'm having a conversation with them about how they're disrupting the game. And those never really go well. Every time I've ever had a huge Critical Role fan playing one of my games, it's been a weird situation that caused detriment to other players.
I'll say the group that I'm in now, or that it's sort of people come, people go, but one of the better players was a big Critical Role fan, and he brought it. He showed up and really thought his character through and engaged at a critical level with the story and with the other characters and stuff. And he he played well, but I think the expectation of like voice actors and I only have so many Irish accents available to me. You're just not going to get, I can't do everything. And this guy's Irish accent is going to change over the course of this conversation because I'm drunk or, for whatever reason. You can't, we're not all voice actors. We're not all Matt Mercer. We're not
Yep.
professionals. We're here to play a game. So
Yeah.
if you think your street, basketball game is going to go well as the 1986 finals, it's not.
Yeah.
I always liked what someone's comeback for that was, well, you're not Matt Mercer. Well, I don't see Laura Bailey sitting across from me either, or Sam Reed. So
Yep. That
I
was
have
my
never
response to
deployed that
somebody.
nuke, but I know people who have, and that just tends to
It ends conversations.
Yeah,
much like
I've done
August 6th
that.
and August 9th, 1945. Yeah, that just ends the conflict right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done the. I know I'm not a professional voice actor, but you're not either, and then they walked out.
I will tell you, and there are people who can testify to this. I don't suffer fools at my table. You've got about, if we're just first time playing together and everything else, you got about 2 or 3 times interrupting me, and I'm just gonna, bring that to a screeching halt. And if it continues to be a problem, any game store I've done in a public setting, the first thing I always say to people, whoever's running it, is I was like, hey, does he understand? Are we, I don't want to walk into a situation where, for whatever reason, you want to keep a customer or do whatever else, and you're going to take someone's side at the table. If I'm setting up the screen and running a game, I'm not going to have somebody be mean to other people is my big thing. That'll get you kicked off my table so quick, I'll make your head spin. The second thing I'm not going to do is basically have people think that I'm the only person at a 5-person game, and this is all like, you're all my, secondary players. What I think that Critical Role has done is it has definitely helped the role-playing scene as a whole with just the investment.
Yep, I agree.
I don't think 5e would have taken off nearly as much as it has. I don't think there's I'll be honest, I don't think we'd be getting a new Dungeons and Dragons movie without Critical Role as many times as Dungeons and Dragons has crashed. And I know I'm having a lot of faith that this next one's going to be good, but I think that we're not even there. I mean, I will freely admit I have not watched season 3, but watched the first 2 seasons of Critical Role, so I am pretty much a strong fan. But
seen more than me.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Some people just don't like it, and especially if you have a negative impact with the fans. I will say that's part of the reason I haven't gotten into season 3 has been that the group of folks around it have made it kind of a environment dealing with.
I just don't like watching other people play D&D. I like every now and then I like watching small time people with their YouTube channel playing D&D. It's fun to watch people sometimes, but whenever you get to the level that Critical Role is, it feels very cringy for me, and I don't know why. I would rather be playing in a D&D game than listening to somebody else running a D&D game.
I'm with you, David. I mean, I'm on a live play podcast for 7 years, and I have no idea why anyone listens to us or watches us. They've got to be there for the dick jokes.
The live play that I watched the most of was one that a friend of mine was on because of just how bad it was, and it just got more and more of a train wreck as it went. The GM had no idea what he was doing and was making people druid had to do checks on whether or not he could shapeshift into animals, and failed one horribly and half turned into a pig mutant thing at one point.
Oh no! All right, it's already 9:00. Good Lord, this went by fast. I do have 2 quick questions from the audience again, and then we will start wrapping this up. So first one is again from Patriotic Gestalt asks, have any of you written a choose your own adventure book? I have not, because I'm lazy. Who has?
I have.
Well, I guess to a certain extent, gaming is a choose your own adventure kind of thing.
I dated a girl that was really big into choose your own adventures for a while, and we took copies of like several famous choose your own adventures and used those as outlines, and wrote choose your own adventures as the thing we did together for a long time, and they were pretty great. I wish I still had copies of them because I would absolutely publish them right now. But yes, I've written choose your own adventures. They are way more ridiculous and way harder to write than you would imagine.
You have to keep up with so many different things when writing that kind of story.
Yeah, we had a massive spreadsheet on the wall, like just poster board with stuff.
There's a electronic system for that now. I have a friend who very much has tried to talk me into doing a choose your own adventure, and that is the only way I've thought about it, is the fact that there's a system to keep track of all the threads. I'll have to remember what it is, because I've buried it for a reason. You know, leading out to temptation and all that. So if you put it in the deplete uranium sarcophagus, you don't go anywhere near it. So I'll have to find it.
We've tried to write one as the Authors and Dragons cast and got about 80% complete, and then all 5 of us collectively, our ADHD kicked in, and we have 80% of one written.
All right, got another question from, I keep blocking stuff on my screen, from Patriotic Just Alt, which is, how much backstory should a character have at level 1 when you're first beginning to play?
As little as possible.
Yeah, you don't need much.
It depends on the game. The one I'm currently running, it was sort of important that people knew who their characters were and what their motivations were for getting into what they were getting into. But other times, if it's going to be a dungeon crawl or strangers meet in a tavern, I don't think they need a lot. So it really depends on the story you're playing.
What I end up doing now is a group backstory instead of a personal backstory. If you want to send me a 7-page personal backstory, I'm never going to read it. If you send me a 7-page group backstory where the group got together and wrote a backstory, that I will do, because that adds value to the game. If you were sitting down at my table as a level 1 character and you have like a few paragraphs or just a basic description of what you want out of the game, what happened to you before the game, and how you know the PCs, that's way more helpful.
I used to do a session 0 where I would meet all the characters and sort of go through some of their backstory ahead of time, and then when we met for the actual game, I could use that to run the game. But I don't think it's necessary, especially in like dungeon crawls or modern D&D. In fact, it can get in the way. Like, I'm looking to save my brother. Well, is he in this hole? Maybe, let's hope, because if not, you're going to be bored. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. There was a side panel question here about Traveler.
Yes, and this is Gerald saying, did any of you ever play Traveler?
And I did. And one of the things about Traveler that's constantly derided is you can die during character generation.
Really?
But yeah. But one of the things that people overlook is that also means you stop at that point. And what it's meant to do is you roll your character through, say, their military career as a Marine. And then if you hit the point that they did not survive that term, you back up, but you actually have a sense of the character's history going into the things. So Traveler was good for that, because the character generation also gave you generation of the people, who you were and how you got to be there. And
I totally forgot about dying during character creation of that. I did that once.
I did it a lot of times, but the way our group ran it was, I played with Chuck Gannon, who a lot of you know through Bane, way back when we were much younger. And the thing about it was, it did have a sense of story to it, because you start out as, beginning Marine or whatever. And then by the end of your character generation, you know what your tours of duty were, what you did, where you picked up various skills, and you feel like more of a person rather than stats. And I'm going to shut up in half a minute. But one reason I really like GURPS is it doesn't have levels. It doesn't have that artificiality of a first level character. You start out with stats and you start out with skills. And I really, really love that because you don't have this artificiality of I'm a first level character. You have a person. And I like that as a writer, and my players really like it as people, as the character.
You should check out the Rogue Trader from Warhammer 40k role playing game. It has like charts that you go through, and you shift left and right if you want to on those charts. But it comes out with some really fleshed out character backstories.
Cool.
There's a second or third edition. I forget what edition of Traveler it is now that Mongoose is putting out. You no longer have to die in character creation if you don't want. But I remember sitting down with the same edition that Jane's talking about. It was a fun mini game. You just I know we all used to sometimes roll up Dungeons and Dragons characters to see how they turned out, but it was different with the Traveler characters because you had an individual who had life experiences. And it could get kind of addictive when you're in junior high or high school, just rolling through and creating different things. And of course, some people wanted to create the starships as well. I remain a big fan of the new Mongoose Traveler, but unfortunately, I usually just end up reading the campaigns rather than running them because I don't have that much time to run. And when I do run, we're usually my very small number of players just want to do fantasy. But yeah, I think Traveler's great.
I'm actually really curious to play it now because I think I had vaguely heard of it before this comment mentioned it, but yeah, it wasn't one that I was really familiar with. Well, we didn't even make it through half my questions. We had such a large crowd, so we might have to revisit this subject again. But since we're 10 minutes over, I think I'm going to start wrapping things up now. So thanks to everyone who came to watch us. We had a good crowd tonight, and thanks all of you for joining me for this. This was super fun. While I wrap up, I just want you guys to again say who you are, what your latest book is, and where people can find stuff. And that will be it. So I guess we'll just go across the screen. And Howard, shall we start with you?
Well, I'm Howard, and I'm the guy with the internet connection problems. But I'm new to Bane. My Doom book will be coming out next August, and it's Lord of the Shattered Land. And my other stuff is available through St. Martin's or Pathfinder. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining us. Jane?
Jane Linsgold. My most recent books from Bane are Library of the Sapphire Wind, Aurora Borealis Bridge, and A New Clan, co-written with David Weber.
Nice. James?
Again, I'm James Young. I do the Usurpers War, alternate World War II history. I have 3 books out. Fourth one will get out when bad things stop happening. You can find me on Amazon, as well as I do sell signed copies off my blog, which is jamesyoungauthor.com.
Nice. And David?
Hey, my name is David Scherer. My last game is Cat Magic the Game, which there you go. I guess you can see there. You can get it at www.lydiascherer.com, along with all of the Love, Lies, and Hocus Pocus books.
Nice. Oh, and by the way, if those of you watching on YouTube and Facebook go to like the show notes, you'll see links to all their websites and whatnot in those notes, so you can go buy everybody's stuff. All right, John.
You can pick up my stuff. I'm John Hartness. You can pick up my stuff at johnhartness.com. Everything's available on Amazon or wherever books are sold. There's, I don't know, 25, 30 something titles out there. There's a bunch. And then I also sell signed books off my website. You can find everything at falstaffbooks.com. And if you're anywhere in the Southeast, I'll probably be at a science fiction and fantasy convention that you're attending at some point in the next 12 months.
And Tim.
I am Tim Akers. Most of what I write is sort of darkly weird, new epic fantasy stuff, but my current series is Night Watch, which is, as previously mentioned, Men in Black at the Ren Fair. Book 2 is Valhellions, about Valhalla going badly. And I'm writing book 3 now, which is the steampunk version. So,
oh, cool.
I'm everywhere.
And finally, I'm HP Holo. I write nonsense fantasy. My most recent series is Monster Punk Horizon, which you can find on Amazon. And also, my cat has come to visit, and here she is. So, Nova will say bye for us. So, bye, everybody, and thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye, Nova.